I hope everyone's having a lovely day. Thank you for joining us this afternoon to talk about interactive outdoor classrooms. I'm happy to introduce to all of you today David Flanigan, the U.S. Director of Market Development for Yelp. And if you have any questions throughout the webinar, I would ask that you direct them to the Q&A section that Matt and I will be monitoring to answer your questions and to pose them to David if he can take them. So David, go ahead.
Great. Well, thank you, Liz, Keith, and Matt, and everyone attending today. We're going to take some time to really look at the opportunity to bring a new way to play into the school environment. So what I'd like to do today is, and my contact information is here actually, and we'll send out a recording from this. So if you have other questions post webinar, you can certainly reach out to me about that. But what I would like to do is kind of frame the conversation a little bit in terms of what we've been dealing with over this last year and a half of the pandemic. And I think we all can attest the fact that COVID has impacted all of our lives in one way or another. And also, unfortunately, it has impacted the opportunity for kids to play both in communities and at school. And that certainly has an impact in the ability for kids to socialize with their peers. We've also seen, of course, a dramatic increase in screen time, but also isolation and impact on child development. We also know that there's a tremendous amount of stress as it relates to the social and emotional impact, and then also not being able to actually have physical activity. And not being in school and having to do virtual school, the limitations around creativity, active learning was severely impacted. And then, of course, the amount of screen time, both in terms of virtual school learning as well as online gaming, has increased dramatically. And of course, as we know, kids are born into a digital environment. Even before the pandemic, we've seen a rise in smartphone technology, and kids are just, that's what they know. And being on screens and online, playing games with their peers, provides a unique opportunity for play, but it also is addictive, and it gives you that instant feedback. And sometimes it can actually take away the opportunity or the desire to go outside and play. So in terms of this presentation, as we think about the outdoor classroom, I want everyone to kind of think about this fundamental question about integration of technology or interactive experience in the learning environment that does provide an active play opportunity to promote learning. Also gets kids excited to want to go outside and play, especially during recess time or even during instruction time, getting them to want to play longer, and then also a strong desire to actually come back to the playground to have a unique experience. But all the while looking at it in a way that allows for the value of play to still be preserved. So it's not just about taking the digital world and bringing it to the physical world and being tethered to the screen. It's really thinking about how to do it in an authentic and intentional way. So with that as a backdrop, I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about Yelp and the products we have, and then I will tie it directly back in to the outdoor classroom, which this webinar is all about. So Yelp is actually a Dutch-based company in the Netherlands, and it is play spelled backwards. So it's a new way to play. Fun and innovative group of people, and a very much a strong focus for play for all ages and all abilities. And one of the unique things that we have at Yelp is the ability to track usage. And that's going to be really important too when I talk more about the educational side, because that is something that can be really leveraged and used in learning in the classroom. So just a brief history or brief numbers. We've been around since 1980, but we weren't really doing the interactive playgrounds until around the early 2000s. And our first interactive playground was installed in 2006. And we've been active abroad since 2011, but we haven't been in the US very long. We've actually only been here for about a little over 3 years. But we are now active in 30 countries, and we have over 900 interactives across the world. So if you go to our website, yelp.com, one of the things that you'll see towards the bottom of the homepage is our activity map. And I just took a quick screenshot to show you where we are located, where our products are located within the US. And you can see there's quite a gap in a lot of places, but we are continuing to grow. And you can also see how many games are actually being played. And these statistics are actually for all of the interactives across the world. But again, another unique feature for us to be able to know how many products are actually out there, as well as how many are being played at one time. So going back to that fundamental question I was asking earlier about how do we create a play environment that sort of brings the experience of the online world into the physical world, because we know screen time is increasing. We know kids are online; they're playing with their friends virtually. So rather than say we want to take that all away and kids should not be on technology at all, at Yelp, we really think that there's an opportunity to bring that experience of the digital world into the physical world, while retaining the play values of social, emotional, cognitive, and physical play. But we also recognize we want to do it in a way that's dynamic, so it's an ever-changing experience. It's inclusive, and it's also fun, and provides an opportunity for learning. And as I mentioned earlier, all the products, we have an online connection, so we're able to be able to create new games, be able to do troubleshooting if there's any issues with the products, as well as any of the settings that we need to have in terms of volume and things like that. But we'll talk more about that in a little bit. And then the usage statistics, of course, is very important as well. So we also recognize that we want to create play experiences that are really dynamic and fun. So we build that into all of our games and the platform that we have for each of our products. We also want to make sure that they're smart, meaning that if you play a game on one of our products for the first time, you may get to the first level, but maybe the second level is a little harder and you have to work a little bit harder and with your peers to get to the next level, just like you would have in a video game or an online game. We also want to get kids outside, kids and families outside. So we want to build playground equipment that's durable and made to last. And we, of course, also want to be able to encourage active and creative play, child-directed, unstructured play. So I'm going to walk through all of our products. We have 5 of them, and as well as a solar option for power. And I won't go into a lot of detail just because I want to make sure we have enough time to really get into the educational component and the outdoor classroom characteristics. So our first product is what we call our Sona Dance Arch. And the way this is structured is that at the top of the arch is a camera, a motion sensing camera. It doesn't record any information, it's just looking at motion. And then it also has lights, so if you wanted to use it at night for an activity or whatnot, you could do that. The arch itself has an inner steel structure, which is a galvanized steel, very, very durable and very strong. And then on the outside is a polyester cap, fiberglass cap, that comes in a variety of different colors, but really is iconic. It really draws you in, and can really be a feature for any kind of a play environment. And then we also have loudspeakers, but they're facing inward, so all of the volume is sort of concentrated in the play area. But there also are settings where you can adjust the volume. And then we also have the flooring, which interacts with the motion sensor. So when you play your game, it all relates back to the camera and the floor. That does also, the flooring can be done in a customized way right now. The standard is this, as you can see here in the picture, the colors and the numbers. But you can do a lot of different customization. And all of our products come standard with 5 what we call starter bundle. And these are really kind of the most popular games that we found. It really does provide an opportunity for lots of different kinds of play, physical play, cognitive play, social play. So these really run the gamut in terms of the types of play opportunities you can provide. And we'll go into more detail about the games when we talk about the outdoor classroom. This is just one example of a Sona. This was not installed at a school, but I just wanted to show this because you can see at the bottom here, the flooring was custom, and in the middle is a tomato. And the community in which this was done in Reynoldsburg, Ohio, they claim to be the birthplace of the tomato. So they wanted to make sure that that was represented in their Sona arch. As you can also see, it kind of frames the rest of that playground area. So the second product we have is called the Memo, and Memo actually is an abbreviation for memory and movement. And again, I'll talk a lot more detail about the games that we have, but the one thing I'll say about the Memo is it really was focused on active play and active learning, and research has shown time and time again that kids learn better when they're moving, they retain information better, and they also process information better when they're actually moving. So the memo is comprised of several different components. The first being the pillars, the game console, if you will, in the middle. That's where you would select the game. And then the peripheral pillows on the outside are where you actually do the gameplay. So finding the answer, finding the color, those are all in those peripheral pillars. The pillar themselves are made out of a strong structural steel and then encased in a plastic cap, which does come in a variety of different colors. And then at the top of each pillar is a 360-degree touchscreen, which is really unique in the industry generally because we had to come up with a unique way of actually creating that. And then the flooring itself, we do have the option of providing a standard black and white, as you can see here, but there are also a lot of different ways you can customize this, and I'll show you some examples of that as well. Again, Starter Bundle has a variety of different kinds of games, but I'll show you the huge amount of other games that we have created for the Memo. So the Sona and the Memo, I'm going to focus a lot more on because they really are where education really does play a big role. So unfortunately, I'm not sure why this is not showing, but this is it should be a memo that was in Cicero, Illinois, so I apologize for that. But I'm going to move on to our next two products, which are more in the sports area. Our first is our Sutu ball wall, and it's comprised of 16 individual polycarbonate panels that have pressure sensors in them, as well as LED lights. And then there's a push button where you actually select the game. And then the panels themselves are actually encased in a strong steel structure, which allows for great durability. And there's also a radar sensor in the middle, so you could actually hit a soccer ball, for example, on the Sutu ball wall, and it'll record how fast you're hitting it. So like with all of our games, it does come standard with 5 starter bundle games, and there is some educational components to them in terms of working with your peers to make sure you're hitting the ball properly. So there's that social component as it relates to interactivity. The next sports-related product we have is called the Yalp Toro Athletic Court or Sports Arena. And what we really looked at is how we could change the game, soccer, field hockey, in such a way that there's more gameplay, there's more interactivity. And so instead of the traditional 2 goals, we actually incorporated 4 goals. So there's a master goal is where you would select your game. You have 3 other goals that is where you would interact with in terms of the different games that we have. And then the flooring itself can be any kind of configuration. It could be a turf, could be a pour in place, could be painted on. So there's a lot of variety that you can do for the flooring. And then we also want to make sure that there's an opportunity for all abilities to come in. And we wanted to make sure that we have an offset entrance to make sure that that is in place. We also want to make sure that this is durable. So all of their goals are encased in concrete. So we do make sure that that's in place. Also, we have a starter bundle. So this again has a lot of different types of things that you can incorporate. The 5 that come standard, but then we also have a lot of other games that are available. And then the last product we have is called the DJ booth or the Phono. And this is really designed towards getting tweens and teens involved in play. So we looked at how to create a play environment where they could use music, where they could socialize. And so this is one of the ways that we thought would be really popular. And this, in fact, in Europe is very popular at skate parks. We don't have any in the US right now, but we're hoping to make that change soon. The interactive DJ booth has all the sort of things that a DJ would have professionally. But the one feature that's really cool is you can actually use your smartphone, picks up the sound waves, and you can actually do a lot of mixing and sampling to make sure that, or to have the experience that a DJ would have. And then again, it does come with starter music tracks. So not games per se, but different kinds of music. And then we do have a lot of variety of other types of music tracks. And then finally, we have a solar option. So of course, all of our products need to have power. But if there's a need to have solar power, we have that as an option. This is a fairly new product that we brought online last year. So we're excited to be able to offer that as an alternative to main power. So that's the products that we have. And now I want to kind of transition really in terms of the educational component. So our company, Yelp, is actually owned by our parent company, Lapset, which is based in Finland. And if you've ever seen lots of different stories that are out there in terms of education systems that are really, really robust and have a lot of good benefits to it, Finland really is sort of at the top. And because of that, we've really looked at how to incorporate play experiences that really give kids an opportunity to learn in a different way. And actually, in Finland, it's mandatory that they have 15 minutes of play for every 45 minutes of instruction. And similarly, in the Netherlands, there is a high value put on education. So kids are outside quite a lot and going out and play on the playground, and having the interactives is a really great opportunity to encourage the kinds of play that they want to have kids be engaged with. So we also have seen too that when you think about different kinds of learning and the different sort of buzzwords that are out there in terms of STEM and STEAM learning, there is a lot of focus on how to do it in such a way that's not daunting, but it should be appealing and approachable. And then you also want to be able to have physical products that will activate different kinds of play or different ways to engage the mind and also memory recall. And so the products themselves really lend themselves to that kind of experience. So one of the things that I also want to make clear is that all of our products do have educational value, some more than others, especially on the Sona and the Memo. But the one thing I want to be very clear is that our interactives are really meant to be a platform for learning. It's not to say that we can't make the claim that if you use our products that you will be able to meet, let's say, STEM and STEAM objectives or 21st century skills or any of the standards that are out there. We can certainly say, though, that they can help to enhance and augment the learning that will be able to lend itself to achieving the standards that are out there, be it Common Core, next generation science standards, and things like that. And the reason why we think about it as a platform is because we're constantly coming up with new games. In fact, last year we came up with 27 new games, and we're constantly looking at ways to create new ones to enhance learning. And one of the things we also recognize in our work is that kids don't even know that they're learning when they're playing on our interactives, which is actually a good thing. Because I think sometimes kids, they hear that they're going to need to do math, and it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. But with our interactives, you're actually creating a learning environment that's playful, and kids don't even know that they're learning. So one of the things we did recently is we did some testing, and we asked the kids to do play, and we observed them. But then at the end of the testing, we said, okay, now it's time for you to go back to your class and learn mathematics. And we said, well, you just learned mathematics. And they said, yeah, but that was fun. So again, it's like when you can make learning fun and active, it really promotes long-term success in terms of getting concepts that might be harder to grasp. So all of our games that we have are really designed to create that fun learning environment. So I think we have seen the video that was sent out, the fly-through that was in the invitation for this webinar. I just took a screenshot. But what I think is really important when you're thinking about designing an outdoor classroom with interactive playgrounds, you have to kind of start with, well, what is the design going to look like? But even before coming up with the design, you need to really think about, well, what kinds of learning do we want to promote? And then once you kind of know that, you then are in a much better position to be able to create a design that has lots of different elements. So just to give you an example, there's a school that we worked with in the Netherlands, and they wanted to create a play environment that was both physical activity, but also had that educational component. And so they came up with a design that has traditional playground equipment as well as the memo that we talked about. And what they found is by having these different sort of learning and physical areas, um, it really promoted lots of different types of play, but they also recognized that having the memo really enhanced the kinds of learning that they were doing in the classroom. So this is just a shot here. You can see the memo and in the background some more of a traditional playground environment. But you can also notice too that where this is located, it's sort of in a courtyard area. And you'll also notice that it doesn't require a use zone, nor does it require any kind of safety surfacing. So because it's also zero entry. So accessibility is certainly something we look at. And then also how it's located in relationship to other things in the school area. Also, we worked with a school in California, in Oxnard, California, called the Rio De Soul School. And one of the things that they really focused on is creating a play environment that helped to augment the 21st century skills of around collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity, but with an eye towards how they could enhance student literacy in reading, writing, and math and technology. And so the memo really was a great solution for them. One of the other things, though, that they wanted to do is to represent the culture of the area. And there's a Native American culture that they really wanted to incorporate. So what they did was they looked at the flooring of the memo and incorporated a lake or a river, I should say, that was important symbol for the Native Americans there. So they incorporated that in, as well as a compass rose. And so that is something that they are able to talk about and teach when they're working with kids at the school. So this is a final version of the actual memo that they put into their schoolyard. And one of the things that they found is that kids don't want to go back into the classroom after they're playing on the memo. Unfortunately, because of COVID, they weren't able to play last year. But now that things are starting to loosen up, we're going back to them and going to be doing some additional testing, testing out new games and seeing how the kids are interacting with the memo. We also did a project in the Netherlands at another school and for younger kids. And what we heard from them is that having the memo really enhanced the math skills that they were teaching. And I'm going to talk through some of the specific math concepts in a moment. But again, you can see kind of where this is located in relationship to the school building. We also, in Campbell, California, we worked with the Campbell School of Innovation. And again, they were looking at their overall play environment and incorporated a Sona into that play environment. Again, being very much a gateway into the overall play space, but very iconic and something that kids really love to play on. And then this is just another example of a project that was done in England. Again, being able to use this during the school day, but also after school hours where the community was able to participate in the play environment. So now let's go into some of the specifics around STEM and STEAM learning. And I think, again, as everybody kind of hears those buzzwords, thinking about 21st century skills, as we all know, those are critically important as kids are going to be going into the workforce. It's critically important that they are able to work with their peers, to problem solve, to come up with ways to do things differently. So all of those sort of major components of 21st century education are things that we think about when we develop our games. And then similarly with the STEM and STEAM learning, how can we create content in our games that do promote those different subject areas, but also with an eye towards not just sort of saying, okay, this is the way to do it, 1 + 1 is 2, but creating some other avenues to be able to problem solve in different ways. So again, as we think about our game development, we are really always looking at the latest research around active play and active learning. How does it tie back into these STEM and STEAM learning concepts as well as 21st century skills? And then there's, of course, also standards that are out there, the next generation science standards. Not all states adopt this, but for states that do, being able to look at our games and how it translates into meeting those standards. And it's not, again, just being able to do rote learning, 1+1, but it's also about working with your peers and to come up with hypotheses, or you're faced with a game that you have to work to come up with the best way to solve a problem. So again, that's something to be looking at as it relates to next generation science standards. So let me dive in a little bit now into the specific game content that we have and how it ties back into a lot of the things I've already been talking about. So I use this as an example for Sona. What I've done here is you can see the 5 starter bundle games: the Freeze, Runtime, Reaction Race, Monster, and Codebreaker, and how it connects into those 21st century skills. So I'll just give you a quick example. Codebreaker. So Codebreaker, the way it works is that you come to the Sona, and the game will say, go in the sequence, break the code. And they'll start out by saying 5, 3, 1. So the child or the adult has to go to the 5, the 3, and the 1 in that sequence. Once they've actually been able to accomplish that, then the sequence will get longer and it'll get faster, which frankly necessitates collaboration, because one person may not be able to get to all those numbers in the time that they have allotted. So there's definitely some critical thinking that's going to go on. There's communication, because you got to make sure you're working together, because you got to get the code in the sequence that it says, as well as you need to be persistent, because maybe that first time you get to level 2 and you might get it wrong, but then it's like, okay, well, let's try that again. And really, there is that opportunity to fail, but to learn along the way. So I use Codebreaker because it's fairly straightforward and simple, but it has a lot of elements that does help in supporting 21st century skill development. Also, in addition to the games that we have standard on all of our products, we do have a library of other games, and this is just a sample of other games that we have. We've done things like counting Chinese, or we've actually created some Sona games that relate to different holidays. We have the ability to put in different audio samples. So we're constantly looking at ways to create games and audio samples that will be relevant to the customer. And I just pulled out this one, the Animal Dance. And you'll notice here in the Animal Dance game, you'll see things that are related to certain characteristics. So it's inclusive, and all of our games are inclusive, of course, but it has an educational component to it. It's meant for younger kids, as well as a group setting. And this game basically is there'll be a game voice come out and it will say, dance like a bear, or dance like a lion, or make the sound of a lion. And so it's taking sort of the concept of animals and animal noises and animal movements and bringing it into the play environment. So yeah, this is just an example of using imaginative play, creative play in this kind of game setting. So moving on then to the memo. The memo has a tremendous amount of different kinds of games. I mean, I shared some of the simple ones we have that are part of the starter bundle, but we are really working on a lot of different content that spans a lot of different disciplines. So everything from literacy to spelling and math. We've really tried to come up with different ways of getting kids excited about learning different concepts through the memo games. So one of the areas that we focus a lot in is on math. So we're looking at all of the sort of major math components around multiplication, subtraction, addition, fractions, etc. But with an eye towards how does that relate to teamwork? How do you work together to solve problems? How does it then relate to STEM and STEAM learning and 21st century skills? And also being able to do it for all ages and all abilities and difficulty levels, and constantly coming up with new ways to create the games. And one thing I think that's pretty exciting is that with all of our math questions we have over 500,000 equations. So you can imagine you'll never be able to do that in one setting for sure. So we're constantly making sure that it's fresh and dynamic every time. So just to kind of give you a couple examples here, addition, subtraction, multiply, divide, sort of the basic facts. Once you're able to kind of go through that, you're creating that solid foundation in terms of, how do you go to higher level math? You certainly have to have those core math subjects done, and gives you the ability to have better speed when you're coming up with the answers to those math facts. So just again, some other math games that we have, things around time, money, weight, Roman numerals, distance, mass. So again, these are some other types of games that we have that are outside the traditional multiplication and subtraction. So when I was mentioning earlier difficulty levels, we kind of want to make sure that if someone comes to the memo and maybe they're a younger age or are still learning some new concepts, they can go in and approach it and start at level 1. But as they get older and as they're learning more, they can select a higher level of difficulty. So it provides a choice, but it also gives kids the opportunity to progress. So when they play a game for the first time, maybe they don't get it, or maybe they don't master it, but because it's fun and it's active, it gets them excited to come back and try it again. And we're also looking at it not so much as a grade level per se. It's universal, so anyone can come in and select which level that they want to start at. And it doesn't also automatically increase difficulty. So if you're going to level 1 and you get past all the different parts of that level 1, it's not going to advance to level 2 until you actually select it. So as you think about basic content, level 1 would be the 2 plus 2, so just 2 digits. When you start to get to the higher levels, it's multiple digits, multiple numbers, all the way up through having higher numbers to be able to add together. So as you can see the progression here. And once you start getting into the higher levels, it definitely necessitates working together to make sure you come up with the correct answer. Also, in terms of advanced content, when you start to think about fractions, you can see here the different levels. And if you have the same denominator on the beginning levels, and then you have different kinds of denominators as you go, or mixed fractions. So you have lots of different ways to advance in these kinds of math concepts. And one question that comes up is, well, should the teacher come in and use this as a way to teach these concepts? Well, maybe. I mean, it really is up to the individual teacher and how they want to use this tool. There is no right or wrong way to do it. But I think the one thing that we can all agree on is that this is certainly a way to enhance the learning. So maybe you're learning fractions in the classroom, you're introduced to the concept, and then you go out into the outdoor classroom, and then you play the memo fraction game, and you're really reinforcing what was learned in the classroom. And it can also be vice versa. So let me just give you a kind of an example of how the memo works. So the first thing you would do is you would come to the memo pillar and you would select a game, and then you press the button. Then it'll ask you to identify which topic. So if it's addition, subtraction, division, whatever you would like, you then select the button, and then you go to the level of difficulty. And then once you press the button after that, it'll actually give you the question that you need to solve. So in this example for math, what you would do is after you've selected what you're going to play, it'll come up with the equation. So in this example, it's 3 times 7. Then there'll be answers that'll go onto all of the pillars. And so together, you all need to kind of find the answer to that question. So once you find the answer that you think is the correct one, you go to that and you swipe the 360-degree touchscreen. So you choose your answer that way. You want to check your answer to make sure that it actually works, and so it'll light up if it actually is correct. And then that correct answer will disappear. And then all the answers will disappear once you've gone through that step. And then it also records how fast you can do it. So for example, if you're doing multiplication and you use 7 times 3, you find 21. Then you go to the next one and you can see how fast you're able to get to that answer. And so it does create some friendly competition. We also have quizzes, and some of the quizzes are already standard, but we also have the ability to do some custom quizzes, which I'll mention in just a little bit. But again, it's very similar. The question will come up, and then you have to find the answer, select the answer, the correct answer will show up, and then you go on to the next question. But we have, just to give you a quick example of a quiz, it might be something like, what makes a hot air balloon rise, just as an example. And then you have to go around and you have to find the right answer related to that question. So again, this is something if you're learning about different properties of matter, for example, you can have quizzes that relate to that. And in addition to the standard games that I mentioned and the games I just shared, we also have the ability to create custom games and also custom audio. So for example, if you wanted to do a game that's specific to the culture of a particular area, we can work with you to come up with the different kinds of questions that you would want to ask, and then we can build out the game based on the questions and answers that you come up with. We also have the ability to do custom audio. So for example, if you wanted to say, welcome to X Park, or you wanted to say something about the area, we can work with you to create custom idols, which we call audio idols, that will show up when somebody comes to the park or to the playground area. So we do have some abilities to do that. And if you have different kinds of dance music that you wanted to incorporate in the Sona for the dance game, we can work with you on that as well. So as I was mentioning custom quizzes, we worked with a educational provider in the Netherlands called Quest. It's very much similar to Discovery Education here in the US, but in the Netherlands, Quest wanted to create some custom games. So we worked with them to come up with that content, and then we also work with them to create a custom branding for their turf floor. So that, of course, is another opportunity to do customization. And then one of the other things from an educational standpoint that I always think about is, and beyond just the games themselves, how do you use the products, or how could you use the products to test things out around the scientific method? And I think we all know scientific method in terms of observation, making a hypothesis, testing the hypotheses, looking at the data to disprove or prove your hypothesis. The products really lend themselves very well to that, especially when it comes to data tracking. So if you have a classroom, for example, that wants to test out a hypothesis, if we do a variable to the playground, let's say it's a Sona Archer memo, what's going to happen to the usage statistics in terms of the graph? So coming up with those kinds of questions and then be able to test it, and then be able to actually see on the back end the statistics associated with testing that hypothesis. And this is where a feature called My Yelp comes into play. So My Yelp is the user interface to be able to do the settings for the products, to be able to change when it's on or off, the volume, as well as being able to select the kinds of games. The games are actually going to be on the product. It also, by the way, is a way for us to track, how the product is performing. So from a maintenance standpoint, we're constantly looking at, hey, is this product is it on? Is there issues? And we're going to figure out if there is an issue, how to get it fixed as quickly as possible. So with the play statistics, again, we are able to look at how much time is being used on that particular product during a period of time. It could be a day, it could be a week. So we do have that ability to do that. We also can see how popular each game is. So if you have a game that's really not being used that much, maybe you rotate that out and replace it with something else. And then we also have a heat map that allows you to see which times of the day are very popular, because that will also determine when you turn the product on or off. So there is a lot of flexibility remotely to be able to make those adjustments to the product. But as I mentioned, with the scientific method, the students working with the teacher can look at the data and then be able to use that to test it out, or to look at it in relationship to the hypothesis that they created. And then this is just an example of one of the data statistics for Rio De Soul School that I was mentioning earlier. So you can see here they were able to track usage, and you'll notice, there are times when it's not being used at all, and maybe you could show this to the kids in the classroom as an example and have them make some observations. So why do you think that on March 16th and March 17th there was no activity? And have them come up with the answers versus you telling them. And of course, the answer, frankly, is that it's a school and it's not open during the weekend, so that's why. But getting the kids to come up with that certainly is important. And then being able to see, like, maybe there was a dip in activity. Well, what happened on that day? Was there something that may have reduced the amount of time that kids were playing on it? What was the weather like? So it's just a really great way, a great tool to be able to make these kinds of observations. And then, of course, with the games, you can see here how many hours of play during a period of time that each game was played. Another cool feature, though, that we have, this is really fun. It does rely on a smartphone, but you can use it to create an augmented reality. So, if you're thinking about doing a interactive as a part of an outdoor classroom, one of the things that kids can be involved is looking at what it would look like in a particular area of the school environment. So we will send this out as a follow-up, but there's a great way to get the picture of the Sona or the memo or any product, frankly, in the play environment or in the park environment or school environment at scale. So it's a great way to kind of visualize what it would look like from a design perspective. So there is a lot of resources on our website. I just took some screenshots here. We have a whole section on creating an environment for educational play. It kind of talks about some of the things I pointed out as relates to creating the design, looking at the different products and the features that they have. There's a whole section on playful learning and how that active play and active learning go hand in hand. There's also the whole section on math games, which I kind of highlighted. So some research that we did, and there's actually a video as well that you can look at. And then we created a blog back last summer that really looks at some of the best practices for setting up a learning environment using our interactives. So I know I kind of went through this fairly quickly, but I want to make sure that there is an opportunity for questions. But the thing I'll sort of conclude with is that play is such a critical part of the learning environment, and especially post-COVID, kids are going to want to go outside and play. We also, I think, recognize that outdoor classrooms are becoming more and more a trend in schools, and I think there's also going to be some money available through stimulus funds or state funds to be able to look at how to create play environments that are really unique, can integrate technology into them, but doing it in a way that's authentic, gets kids excited to go outside and play and learn at the same time, and then really enhance what the teachers are teaching in the classroom so that kids are wanting to learn more, to challenge themselves, to have fun, and get all the benefits that play does provide. So with that, I think there may have been a couple questions. Liz or Matt?
Hey, David. Yes, there were a few questions that we answered in the chat. Did you want to go over some of them just in case people had the same questions?
Sure. I'm just kind of looking through. I think if you already answered them, I don't necessarily need to go back through them.
Yeah, I don't think so. We answered all of them. There were some questions about where the products were made, some installation questions, and also about the service packs. But we sent some links, a link to the catalog. So unless anybody has any other questions, feel free to drop those in the Q&A now.
All righty.
All right. Well, I just want to thank everybody. Thanks to MRC team for inviting me to present today. And one thing I'll just remind everybody is that we have a tremendous amount of resources on our website. And if you want to learn more, feel free to reach out to the MRC team or myself if you wanted to get any more specific information about the products and more of the details, because today was really meant to do an overview of the products and to connect it into how they could be integrated into an outdoor classroom environment. And I know that MRC also has other products that you can work with them on to have a holistic outdoor classroom.
Hey, David, there was one question that just came in. DSA pre-approved in California. I think I know the answer to that. But do you have a formal answer?
Yes, when we did the projects in California, we went through a DSA process. So yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you.